Introduction. The city-state of Singapore is situated near the southernmost point of the Malay Peninsula. The Johor Strait, a narrow waterway bright by a causeway for roads and trains that is longer than half a mile, divides the main island from Peninsular Malaysia to the north. The Malay, Chinese, Indian, and European cultures have all left their mark on the nation's rich cultural legacy. Singapore is a distinctive and significant role in the area, and the world thanks to its ability to successfully transition from a tiny trade station to a major economic force.
Singapore society is divided into four primary ethnic groups. Chinese 75 until 70 seat population, Malay 15%, Indian around 7 to 8%, and others ethnic such as Eurasian, who are people of mixed Europe and Asian. The major religion in Singapore include Buddha, Christian, Islam, Hindu, and others. Singapore is known for its religion diversity, and there is a significant percentage of the population that practice multi-religion. Other than that, Singapore official language is English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil.
This country was ranked as one of the most competitive economies in the world, given that Singapore's port is reputed to be the busiest and largest in the world. Manufacturing and service contribute significantly to the country's prosperous economy. A highly developed free market economy characterizes Singapore's economy. The primary sources of income for this nation, in spite of all the obstacles, are export of petroleum products, chemicals, medical equipment, optical devices, and other items. Okay, so there are two types of inflation that I study, namely demand pull inflation and cost push inflation, which is cost push inflation is divided into three, namely wage push inflation, import push inflation, and profit push inflation. So demand pull inflation means when total demand exceeds total supply, and that is inflation occurs. So this can happen due to an increase in total demand, which may be caused by higher government spending, increased business investment, rising consumer demand, or an increase in demand for export from abroad. This factor can shift the total demand curve to the right. For example, lowering income taxes can boost consumption, reduce interest rate can encourage investment, and a decrease in the currency value can promote greater net exports. According to Keynes, demand pull inflation theory, at full employment, aggregate demand will surpass aggregate supply, leading to an increase in the price level. So for the cost push inflation is the result of rising production costs and falling aggregate supply due to factors such as crop failure, labor shortage, capital shortage, or raw material shortage. Consequently, the price level was raised. Okay, so
Factor of inflation. Strong demand and constrained supply in the global economy. Following the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, nations may resume economic operation as customers look for products and services that were out of stock during the lockout. Demand has sharply increased. This implies that sellers have the ability to drive inflation by raising price. Because other nations are still imposing restrictions to contain the virus epidemic, demand is rising, but supply is not keeping up. Operation at port, industry, and store are thus still interrupted. Delays and shortages arise from this, which is impact global supply chain for manufacturing, logistics, and transportation. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine in February 2020 further increases the strain on inflation. Major commodities including oil, gas, wheat, fertilizer and cooking oil are supplied by both nations. Conflict caused delay in supply, raised the price of commodities and fuel costs pushed inflation. For instance, rising energy prices have driven up the cost of transportation and power for business and consumer globally, including in Singapore. Singapore import expenses for food are also increasing. Increased grain price make it more costly to make bread, which forced bakers to increase the bread price. Meat costs rise because grain is also utilized in animal feed. For instance, an important source of food import for Singapore farmer in Malaysia to reduce the supply of vegetable and chicken. Higher global price drove up Singapore import costs. With its highly open economy and heavy reliance on imported product and service, Singapore was severely impacted by the demand-supply imbalance in the global economy. For instance, nearly half of the Singapore consumer price basket is made up of imported goods and services, such as food items, including raw fruit and vegetables, natural gas used to generate power, and travel service. In actuality, import account for more than 19% of Singapore food intake. Singapore is thus very susceptible to fluctuation in the worldwide cost of product and service. Effect of inflation in Singapore. Number 1. Purchasing power erosion. The purchasing power of the currency is reduced by inflation. The same amount of money can buy less goods and services as the overall level of price increase. This may have a negative impact on the ability of consumers to maintain the standard of living, in particular if wages are not raised at the same rate as price. Number 2. Cost of living increase. The cost of living often rises as a result of higher inflation. Household budget can be affected and potentially strained by increased costs for basic goods and services like housing, food, healthcare, and education. Number 3. Interest rates. Interest rates can be adjusted by NCBS, such as the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, with a view to controlling inflation. In order to moderate economic activity and limit price increase, an increase in inflation may trigger a rise of interest rate by central bank. In turn, the cost of borrowing for business and consumer can be affected. Number 4. Impact on saving and investment. The actual value of saving may be undermined by inflation. Savers may experience a decline in buying power over time if interest rate on saving or fixed income investment are not keep up with inflation. On the other hand, certain assets such as real estate and stock could be a hedge against inflation.
So as we know, there are two types of public policy, fiscal and monetary policy. Before that, I want to clarify about public policy first. Public policy is a set of law, guidelines and action decided and taken by governments in order to work in favor of the public. Public policy can dictate things such as which law are passed, where funding goes, and which topics concern the general public. Now we go to monetary policy. Monetary policy is a policy carried out by the central bank or Bank Indonesia with the aim of maintaining and achieving currency value stability, which can be carried out among others by controlling the amount of money circulating in the community and setting interest rate. Monetary policy is in the form of policy measures implemented by the central bank or Bank Indonesia to be able to change the money supply or change the existing interest rate with the aim of influencing spending in the economy. So now we go to fiscal policy. It's the government's step for changes in the tax system or in its spending, which to overcoming the economic problem it faces. Fiscal policy is an adjustment in government revenues and expenditures as stipulated in the State Revenue and Expenditure Budget, which is abbreviated as ABPN, to achieve better economic stability and the desired pace of economic development, which is generally stipulated in the development plan. Fiscal policy is the dominant policy tool and governance of developing countries. Changes in macro indicators that are the target of fiscal policy can be contrastive or expansionary.
In fiscal policy, to measure to control inflation is increasing tax. Tax increase will lower people's disposable income and diminish their purchase of product and service, and the cost of goods and service will decrease when consumer demand decline. By using this technique, the inflation issue can be resolved. By this method, there will have an impact on consumption when individuals have less money to use or spend, so consumer spending will decrease. Also, controlling inflation using tax increase can calm down an overheated economy and ease inflation pressure. The government is decreasing consumers' spending power and restrict industry investment. Monetary policy for inflation. In Singapore, to measure to control inflation, there use contraction monetary policy such as open market operation to the public and commercial banks. Commercial bank will offer short-term bonds, government security and treasury bills. As a result, both the public overall cash holding and commercial bank cash reserve will decline. As a result, selling security will lower the amount of money in the economy. The central bank in Singapore in charge of setting monetary policy is called Monetary Authority of Singapore. Open market operations are techniques that much like many other central banks may utilize to carry out monetary policy. MAS may participate in open market sale of government security or bond in contraction posture. Other than that, Singapore uses interest rate to control inflation. Rate of interest for saving. Central bank will convince commercial bank to raise the interest rate on deposit made by the public. A high interest will draw customers and motivate them to cut down on spending and save more money. People will thus hold less money, consume less, and amount of money is circulated will decline. Also, banks may need to compete for the remaining cash when the money supply decreases. The competition usually results in higher short-term interest rates. Recommendation for inflation. Here are a few tactics that are frequently used is reduce unnecessary spend. Spending can be divided into two categories: optional costs such as entertainment and fixed costs such as energy bill and house loan payment. Optional costs are you incurred that not necessary. Optional expense are by definition non-essential. Therefore, you should focus on cutting them first. You don't have to fully cut them out, especially if it won't significantly lower your level of living. Simple action like cancelling a membership that isn't being used can be the first step. The way to overcome inflation is increase income. The hardship brought on by the rising expense of living can be somewhat reduced by looking for additional source of income. If requesting a compensation increase is not feasible, consider looking into other side gigs. Example, including giving lesson, renting out your own car for special occasion, selling things you no longer need, or turning a hobby like baking into side business. Making your money work hard with diverse investment portfolio is one option. Finally, the government should also act for this matter. Inflation should overcome together so it can back to normal. So to avoid unjustified price increase, the government may occasionally implement price control on necessity. This includes commercial and service, but this is usually a last resort approach, meant to be transitory. Or other than that, try to make investment and long-term finance. This way, it can help to survive an effective strategy in the struggle against inflation in Singapore. The key to success is to choose investment options that, in the medium to long term, have historically provided return that above inflation. One way to reduce the risk of inflation is to spread excess you own across different asset classes, such as equity, bond, real estate, and exchange trade fund. Consider real estate investment that yield consistent income or stock investment in industries that are expected to prosper despite inflation. This approach have the potential to stimulate growth and generate income streams that either match or surpass inflation.
Types of unemployment. There are 4 types of unemployment. For the first one is cyclical. Cyclical is a factor contributing in Singapore include a decline in domestic demand for goods and service, increased manufacturing costs, and a slowdown in export growth. These factors are influenced by both domestic and global economic trends and may lead to reduced production and layoff in various industries. Policymakers can use fiscal and monetary measures to address cyclical unemployment during economic downturns. So the second one is frictional. Frictional unemployment is a temporary form of unemployment that occurs when individuals are in between jobs or entering the workforce for the first time. It is a natural part of the labor market and it is associated with job search and matching processes. Factors such as changes in personal circumstance and voluntary job departure would contribute to frictional unemployment. While it cannot be completely prevented, government policies and programs can help minimize its impact. The third one is structural. Structural is the recent acceleration of technical development in Singapore can be attributed to the country's shift from a labor-centered economy model to one focused on productivity. The emphasis on research and development R&D aims to increase resource efficiency and worker productivity, driving economic growth. However, technological innovation may lead to job displacement, requiring government support for workers to transition to new industries and acquire necessary skill. Promoting lifelong learning and upskilling will be crucial in addressing potential impacts of technological unemployment. For the last one is seasonal. Seasonal unemployment in Singapore affect industry like tourism, agriculture, retail, and construction due to factors such as
weather, and school schedule. This fluctuation can make it difficult to interpret changes in the overall unemployment rate. Economics use seasonal adjustment technique to remove this effect from the data. Understanding the impact of seasonal unemployment is crucial for policymakers to develop effective strategies for managing unemployment during periods of lower demand.
Factors of unemployment in Singapore. Number 1. Structural. Labour mismatch, which refer to a persistent imbalance between supply and demand for labour within skill group and industry, could be the cause of this. As a result, while there are many job vacancies, they cannot be filled by those who do not have the skill required for this new job. Globalization and a rapid pace of technology change have made the risk of labor mismatch more pronounced over this last year. Therefore, in order to create a new job, they need higher skill and training is increasing. Number 2. Cyclical. Change in the economic situation are linked to this type of unemployment. This is because the economy has been in recession and that a lack of overall demand caused it. In particular, demand from consumer decreased when the economy in the recession. Businesses are experiencing difficulty in selling all their existing production. Consequently, they reduce production and subsequently reduce the number of workers employed. Thus, the real unemployment rate is higher than that of natural unemployment. Number 3. Frictional. Singapore's unemployment rate is also driven by frictional unemployment. The continuous flow of people from job to job or out of employment is connected with this type of unemployment. As resources need time to flow into the market, Singapore will be filled with unemployment. In particular, it takes time to find the right job for workers, and this is a result of market imperfection, like insufficiently accurate knowledge of current market conditions. In conclusion, structural, cyclical and frictional unemployment are major causes of unemployment in Singapore.
Unemployment can have various effects in individual, community and economy, and unemployment in Singapore has a big impact in consumer spending. This is because unemployment people have a less disposable income, and the rate might cause a decline in consumer spending. Consumer spending may decrease because of unemployment since people may decide to spend less on non-essential items. Also, consumer confidence and expenditures might decline due to unemployment as people become more frugal with their money. Business may suffer as a result, especially those in retail, hotel and other customer-driven industry. The real estate market may be impacted by unemployment since people may find it difficult to make ends meet on their rent and mortgage. There may be a greater consequence for the building and associated business if the home market slows down. The government can also receive less tax money because of it. This might have an impact on enterprise and result in a decline in the market for goods and services.
Unemployment policies. The first is short-term support for displaced workers. Mr. Patrick Tay, who is also Assistant Secretary General of the National Trades Union Congress, reiterated his call for the government to introduce a permanent scheme to provide short-term unemployment support for workers who are displaced, including professionals, managers, and executives. The next one is while many developed economies have seen a fall in the percentage of public expenditures allocated to development. Singapore nevertheless dedicates a sizable portion of its budget to investment and development. The last one is with the help of community-based employment programs, which offer a flexible way to solve unemployment in variety of neighborhoods, including rural ones, women, minorities, and Singaporean group are now more involved in the production and provision of service. Recommendation and employment. The first is participate in volunteer work and internship to get experience. Experience is the main barrier to employment for the majority of recent graduates. Graduates lack the real-world experience needed to be employed, despite having the necessary abilities to do so. Next is make the job hunt focus. To increase people's chance of getting noticed, focus the job search on positions that specifically demand their expertise and set of skill. Last one is career training. For people to make wise career decisions, they need to have experience in the workplace to support employers and educators in creating experiential and workplace learning. The government must implement a program.
The conclusion is this study aims to examine the relationship between inflation and unemployment history's effect from the perspective of the diversity of genders in Singapore. Singapore has been recognized as the world's leading international financial center and become the best one-year economic growth in Asia.